hello, everybody. This is episode number 31 of the Sports Consiglieres podcast. My name is Jim Whalen. Along with me, always, is my friend, my pal, my distinguished gentleman, and my consigliere, Jerry. How you doing, Jerry?
What's up, Jimmy? How's it going, everyone, today?
All right. Well, from what I heard, there's 3.2 million podcasts. About 600,000 of them do weekly. So we fall in that 600,000 doing a weekly show, but we also fall in that area where we're not getting paid either. So not too many people are getting paid for podcasts. So we're doing it out of the love, and then no greater love than the New York Giants. So news dropped today on Monday. What do you think of the news that John Mara sent out? We discussed this. We discussed this, beginning of the season, during the season, last couple episodes. What do you think about John Mara bringing back Joe Shane and Dave's for year 4?
Not surprised. A little disappointed, and I think the disappointment level for Giant fans should have elevated. Excuse me, after watching or listening to John Mara's press conference. It was a little bizarre. You lost 14 games,
franchise record,
one game at home, and then I think this is where I'm going to go with this today. Is you have somebody like Jerry Jones, who is ultra intrusive, for a lack of a better word, micromanager, and then you have John Mara, who comes in, throws you a few crumbs, and then kind of walks back those crumbs. He wasn't happy with either side of the ball. He doesn't know. He tells you, well, I didn't like the defense. I'm not so sure about the head coach calling the plays, but I'm not going to force them to make changes. Is that his way of not taking any responsibility? Like, hey, I didn't force them to do it. And I think at some point it was just a very bizarre press conference. That's something that I didn't really need. I think sometimes he tries to be super honest, and I didn't think he needed to go public with that. And then he basically said a year from now, he has to see significant improvement. You don't have a quarterback. You're drafting third. There's probably a good chance that you don't draft the quarterback that you want. I know now there's all sorts of scenarios, taking the kid from Alabama, whatever. But, then you look at their schedule, and we talked about this the other day. It's a brutal home schedule. It's a brutal schedule overall. So what's significant progress? They win 5 games with a rookie quarterback. I don't understand it. I didn't want them to keep one without the other, and I don't think the Giants would ever keep a coach without a GM. They would keep the GM first. The Giants, have always operated like that. They're connected at the hip. I mean, so I didn't want the situation like with Jerry Reese, staying and Coughlin going, but it was just I found the way I don't know if he's losing it, if the losing is getting to him. We kind of talked about that the other day, but. As they say, it is what it is. It worries me that if you have a general manager who feels that he has a 1-year reprieve, Giants have pretty good cap money. I really hope the damage is not done in further years. And I know Joe Shane obviously is going to say that that's not his intention. But, hey, listen, if you come into a situation and you're told, hey, you have to show significant improvement. I don't want to say win now. I mean, he didn't put a playoff mandate on them, but, it's concerning.
It is very concerning.
And for me, I wouldn't like. They have holes, as we all know. So I'm not a big fan if Sanders and Ward go 1 and 2 in any particular order. I'm not really a fan of dumping that pick at 3 to accumulate more capital, because I think there's talent in this draft, and the Giants have a lot of holes, and they should pick a player, Travis Hunter or whoever the case may be. And,
they have a lot of needs.
They have a lot of needs. I don't think it's as bad. The injuries hurt them. I don't think it's as bad as people make it seem, but I mean, there are holes there. And this is definitely not, a 1 year thing.
And I think you alluded to in past episodes, there's eight vacancies right now. There's better jobs out there right now, and I think that's probably what Mara is probably wrestling over, is that there's better jobs right now. The Bears need a coach. The
Oh, you got
Patriots,
an exciting quarterback. Patriots,
yeah,
you got
they
your
need a
quarterback.
coach. I mean, Jacksonville,
You have
they
a
got
quarterback.
Lawrence. Raiders,
You need a quarterback.
yeah, the Jets is that's another story, and the
Yeah.
Saints. So I mean, I'd say probably half of them are just need a little bit of tweaking. So I think that those coaching vacancies, and I think that we talked off camera. I think the Patriots really did Mayo dirty up in New England. I mean that was that I, you're following Bill Belichick. You never want to be somebody to replace a legend, but after 1 year, I don't think he did that bad of a job. But I think all signs point to Vrabel going there, and then with the Giants, are they going to lose their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator? Giants defensive coordinator was Vrabel's defensive coordinator. Are they going to do a swap on that? So Shane Bowen came from Tennessee. So I mean Kafka, I think where does he go from here? He had the play calling stripped from him. So does he go to college and try to
Well, he's interviewing for a few jobs. He interviewed for a few jobs the last time. He has 2 interviews. The Giants granted permission for to be a head coach. I don't think he'll get either one of those jobs. Unfortunately, the way the league is set up, you get a lot of people, a lot of organizations, they because of the Rooney Rule, and Mike Kafka fits that. He actually is a minority candidate. A lot of people didn't know that. I would like to see him stay with the Giants and resume play calling. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. I think that there's a good chance that happens. And to be honest with you, if Shane Bowen reconnected with Mike Vrabel, the Giants, I don't think are going to stand in their way, because I really don't know if he's even going to come back.
Yeah, well, I would be surprised too. So
Right.
I mean, but
that's another thing. Now you said your head coach and GM have to show significant progress a year from now, and yet again, the Giants have another important coaching change. That they're going to, it's going to be a new system, I'm sure, and the show goes on, as they say. But man, I would have just rather had John Mara. Keep it simple. They are returning. I support them. They are returning. Period. Leave it at that. Don't even make a comment and go from there. And
well, keep it simple.
Keep it simple, right?
Brevity is levity, because I mean he really muddied the waters. And then if I'm on the staff, in the personnel staff, I mean I'm dusting off my resume and sending out to some of these jobs too. If I'm not, you got Shane and Dabol, but anybody else working, that's a younger person and wants to make something in the league, aspire to would be a GM or something else. I mean, like you just sent the message that the clock is ticking now. So I think he muddied the waters with that. I mean, listen, he probably had a lot of sleepless nights with this season, and I don't blame him. He's paying the bills. It's 100-year anniversary of the Giants. We focus that on this podcast very often with players, and then our moments and everything else. It had to be a tough season, especially if you're the owner. So
absolutely.
Hey,
listen, there's a lot of things that could happen with this quarterback. I mean, I remember, and it doesn't seem that long ago. Right after Phil Simms, the Giants were convinced they had something in Dave Brown, who showed promise at the beginning. Then you had the Dave Brown, the Kent Graham flip-flop. That seemed like they were just flipping a coin. Dan Reeves brought in Tommy Maddox, which was a disaster. He was with them in Denver. And then, really things, Danny Canal, he got them in the postseason, with Fossil's first year. But, remember, one of the Giants were not, how should I say this? They never really hit big home runs in free agency. And one of their home runs that they did hit was Kerry Collins. So, maybe, like I said, there's other ways, to get a quarterback than the draft, especially if this draft is considered weak. I mean, who knows with Minnesota? If Minnesota has a huge run, and do they lock up Darnold and make JJ McCarthy available? Giants were very high on JJ McCarthy last draft. You still have Justin Fields. I mean, when the Giants got Kerry Collins, everybody thought that they were getting the Kerry Collins that you saw when he played with the Saints, albeit briefly. You got the Kerry Collins from Carolina and then some. He had really good years. The Giants offense really flourished under him. Fossil had some really good years. They had a few bad exits from the playoffs, the 49er game. But, point being is he stabilized the position, and ultimately, they drafted, Manning replaced him, and he gave the Giants good years. So, when the draft is not there, when it's not there in the draft, you can't force it. And if you force it, we'll be having these same conversations, 5 years from now. So,
yeah. Well, I'll throw some names at you. Cousins down in Atlanta. What do you think? You think that's a viable?
I would, again, my son wants to make me a wager that they're going to take the kid from Alabama. So a situation like that where they draft somebody in the later rounds. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rule out Cousins. I wouldn't rule out Justin Fields. I wouldn't rule out making a move for McCarthy. I mean, there's a few scenarios.
Yeah, and it depends how Darnold. I don't know if you watched the Lions Vikings game. I mean, I think he got a little bit exposed there. He got played against good defense, so much so that Aaron Glenn was sitting on the bench with his legs crossed, like he said the game is won. So, I mean, he got exposed. I mean, I think he definitely showed a lot of fans, especially in this area, and Jet fans, what he's capable of. But he got exposed. So I mean, who knows where Minnesota goes? What about a Mac Jones? Another Alabama guy. No. And then you got Garoppolo. He's a retread.
They had an opportunity with this regime. Had an opportunity previously, if you remember. It was actually year one. Garoppolo's name kicked around, and I think they could have did something, and they didn't.
Andy Dalton, he's down in Trey Lance. I mean, he really hasn't found a home.
Nah.
Teddy Bridgewater is backing up Detroit.
Didn't he just win a state championship too as a high school coach?
Well, I don't know about that, but
I think he was coaching. He was coaching high school football. I believe he did very well.
No kidding. But he had his moments. They came, I guess, from a missed field goal to going to the Super Bowl. But what do you think about trading for a Kyler Murray? You think that Arizona might cut ties with Murray? You think that for number 3? But then again, it goes back to what quarterback are they going to take?
Well, that's the thing. I don't see that materializing. And again, making a trade. What is that costing you? Because you can't, unfortunately, I think what's going to happen is, you're looking at a guy that you're bringing into as a bridge guy, right? To close the gap, to bridge the gap, as they say. So you're going to get somebody that is going to be somebody that you're hoping rebounds or plays as they were predicted to play, meaning like Justin Fields, like come in, surprise the hell out of you. Hopefully you get a few years. But Cousins, you're not going to get anybody without costing you. And the Giants aren't in the position to make a trade that they have to give up a lot of capital. That would be silly,
Yeah.
And, I think at some point, whether they trade up or something, they will take a quarterback in this draft some way, somehow, somewhere. You can write that down.
I think
and they'll have to bring somebody in, and and I think a veteran. People were blown away years ago when they brought in Kurt Warner. To help bridge, get Manning acclimated to the NFL. So you never know. Like I said, I wouldn't rule out. Let's say a few weeks from now, let's say Minnesota's in the NFC Championship. Let's just say. They decide to lock up, Sam Darnold. I mean, trading for McCarthy, they were high on him. I know he's coming off the injury. That's like having another, trading for a draft pick this year. The guy didn't play last year. But
Yeah, well, sometimes you got to go with the sure thing. I mean, and
yeah,
what about other needs? Do you think that they go offensive line? I think Burns and Thibodeau on the wings on the defense. I think they'll probably pick up the 5th-year option on Thibodeau.
I think you'll see them. The offensive line is always a concern. They're definitely going to probably draft another offensive lineman.
And Neal will probably let walk, right? Evan Neal will probably
the guard position. They got Van Roten, who wound up playing every snap this year, so I don't see the harm in bringing him back on a 1-year deal. But I could tell you right now, they're either going to draft or do both, spend a lot of money on repairing that interior line to put somebody with Lawrence, because their run defense was atrocious.
Yeah, it was.
So they gotta go back to the old way, the old Giant days, controlling the line of scrimmage.
And then
on both sides of the ball.
I mean, it depends what they lose. They're probably going to need a third receiver. You got Neighbors.
Well, I mean, again, here's the deal: you got Neighbors, you got Neighbors, you got Robinson. Nobody knows what the story is with Hyatt. They might try to move him. Slayton's a free agent. You don't know what the market is for him. So
he had a lot of optimism, but and a lot of talent, but I don't. He just never got the ball. I mean, they never really underutilized him. So they're getting a third line. And then what about linebackers? So we talked about this Ojulari. I mean, there's a.
Well, he's an edge rusher. He's not coming back. He can't stay healthy.
Yeah,
you got Okora K. McFadden did a good job in the middle. I mean, that's one of their strengths. I mean, they do have guys that can make tackles, and play, inside linebacker. The, Nunez Roches, he was kind of a disappointment. So I think you'll see them spend a little bit of draft capital or money, in the interior defensive line. And obviously they need another corner, because Banks is not the number one guy. So, I mean, it'll be – listen, there's a lot. The NFL, like we talked about, has really become a 12-month operation. And unfortunately, when your team is not in the playoffs like the Giants, this is what you talk about. Giant fans can't wait, for the combine. They can't wait for free agency. I don't really see them going crazy in free agency. I think they'll spend money, and they'll address, as they said when free agency first came to the NFL, they'll go like for a plan B. There'll be a lot of plan B free agents.
They're not looking for the. I mean, they got Burns this year on a big contract. So I mean, but I don't think that they're. I think they're going to play it safe. So I think that I agree with you there. I don't think they're going to spend the money. But you think they go after Hunter? I mean, if so, I guess they draft 3 in the first round, number 2 in the second round, and number 1 in the third round, depending on because of the way it falls. So
Hunter's an intriguing. Obviously, many people consider him the best player in the draft. He has both sides of the ball. Very, very, very intriguing. Again.
Yeah, Heisman Trophy winner.
Somebody moves up. Do the Giants move up? You know how it is? We used to make the joke that usually when the Jets draft high, they screw up the whole draft. So you get all these mock drafts, and on draft day or right before draft night, somebody pulls off a stunner. The whole draft could go sideways, and we've seen that before.
Yeah. We certainly have.
But if I'm Shane, you have to take somebody at 3. There's talent there. You have to take somebody at 3 as opposed to moving down. And again, for all we know, maybe they do move up. Maybe they do move up to 2. Who the hell knows?
Yeah, and then we talked about this off camera. Aller's talking about from the Penn State quarterback. If they win a national championship, he's coming out. So it also depends on the next couple of weeks what happens with these college games. You see who's coming.
Yeah, I mean, and because what you have to be careful of is with a quote unquote not good quarterback draft. What you have to be careful of is when the combine starts and so on and so forth. You get a guy like Daniel Jones, played well at the Senior Bowl, and then it's like, oh wow, and his stock rises because it's a limited field. He looks good. He looks good in a very limited field, and that's what if you're the Giants, that's what you have to be careful of. I mean, you take a guy in round 2, you hope you can develop him. I just really see that they're gonna. My first thing is they're gonna really try hard to move up, and if they don't, I would like to see them stand pat at 3 and then go to Plan B. But I know they spent extensive time. Not that this is a surprise. They have spent extensive amount of time of looking at what they're considering guys that are going to go possibly late first round or in the second round or even later rounds. And again, there's also a lot of people. Boomer Esiason is one. We could start rattling guys off that really don't think Sanders should be drafted as high as he's probably going to be drafted. So, it's interesting. It's exciting to have a top pick because your hope is not that you're excited that your team is in that position, but when it does happen, the draft starts coming up and, you got the talk, hey, my team is in a good position, but you screw that up, boy. You don't want to be in this situation often. And it seems like the Giants, are in this situation often. And, they bomb with Evan Neal, they bomb with Daniel Jones. So, I mean, the hope is this time around that this, you don't see them drafting this high for a very, very long time, but, we shall see.
Yeah. I was going back to the Mel Kiper with the Irsay when he called him out. He goes, "Who is Mel Kiper?" And then it goes, and Mel Kiper came back to the Colts owner. He's like, "That's why they're always drafting number 1." So, but until he got Peyton Manning, so
I mean, it's true. It's true.
It's a pass league, and you need the quarterback.
Absolutely.
You need the coach and a quarterback. So, just turning to the playoffs. What games do you like, and then who do you think is going to be there?
Well, as a Giant fan, it would break my heart if Washington won. It would break my heart if Philly won, but more so Washington because, and I had this conversation with somebody yesterday. I mean, Jaden Daniels is very, very exciting to watch. I mean, and as we know from Hard Knocks has told us a lot about the Giants. They were very high on Jaden Daniels, and I think Washington has their work cut out for them. I'm quietly with the Giants not in it. I'd like to see Tampa and possibly Detroit do something in these playoffs. So first round, you have Washington at Tampa. I like Tampa. You have the Packers at the Eagles. I don't think, unfortunately, as much as I despise the Eagles, but in all honesty, good luck trying to stop them. And then you have the Vikings and the Rams. And unfortunately, due to current circumstances, the absolute horror show going on in LA, there's a good chance that game will be moved to Arizona.
Yes,
the NFL announced that last night. And then you have Detroit in a bye. That's pretty much the NFC. I think if the listen, how do the Rams react? LA, my heart breaks for everybody out there. How do the Rams react? They have family members involved. There's a lot of emotional things going on there. And obviously, people's homes and their livelihoods were unfortunately destroyed. So do the Rams, does that lift the Rams? They go out to Minnesota. I think that's a good matchup. The Rams are playing well. Vikings have had a good year. The winner of that game will play the Lions. Then you flip it over to the AFC. You have Pittsburgh and the Ravens. That's a divisional matchup. I mean, that should be good physical football. I don't see Baltimore losing. And then you have Denver, who I think will play well, but Buffalo, I think, will obviously prevail in that one. And then the Texans and the Chargers. I'd like to see C.J. Stroud earn the right to go to the next round to play the Chiefs. So very exciting weekend in football. And one quick note, you had that Viking-Ram game, which is interestingly enough scheduled on Monday night. So the NFL trying to do something a little bit different by putting a Monday night affair in the playoffs out there. And, the race to New Orleans is on.
Yeah, and then it depends because they said he might move that to Arizona because figure LA, you
Correct.
got both LA teams sharing SoFi Stadium. That would have been good for the city too. But I mean, they're dealing with other things right now. What about predictions going forward? Who do you think going into the Super Bowl?
I'm going to go out and say, Detroit and the Ravens.
You think the Ravens?
Yes.
Why the Ravens?
I just don't trust Buffalo in a big spot. The game. So if Baltimore wins, obviously they're the Buffalo's the 2 seed. Obviously that game is played in Buffalo. I could see Baltimore. I could see. I'm going to go against the grain on this one because usually John Harbaugh has a very bad exit from the postseason. I think Jackson is playing at an all-time high. I think they prevail.
He's fun to watch. Jackson's fun to watch.
In Buffalo. He is.
So,
So
and then you got.
I'm gonna go against the grain. I'm gonna pull a Seinfeld here. We're gonna go complete opposite because usually a lot of people outside their Super Bowl appearance there, John Harbaugh usually has a bad exit.
Yeah, and then they haven't done well in the playoffs.
Correct. So, and they're always a good seed. They're always a high seed. So
and
that's what makes it more disappointing.
And you got Henry on these games. Probably it's got to be top 10 back in the NFL. You have
sure. In any condition, you love to have.
I mean, and he's hard to tackle, and then you have Jackson. He just makes the right plays, but
mm-hmm.
I don't know. Why Detroit? You think that they get tested at all to the playoffs? You think anybody?
I mean, I like the way they're built, and again, on a fandom thing, I'm pulling for Dan Campbell because, like I said, Detroit was a bottom of the basement organization, and he came in and he was really laughed at the press conference. I mean, you see it now. Everybody is, rehashing his rant. He was trying to make a point, and again, maybe it was a little goofy, but whatever. Obviously, it worked, and he changed the culture there. I think that's a good story. I think that's a good story.
It is a good story, and I think that they had the game won last year against San Francisco, but I think, I don't think that happens again. I don't think, but
right.
I still say Kansas City, Andy Reid, and Mahomes. I don't know how you can go. Mahomes, for some reason, when you think you have him wrapped up, he gets loose and goes on these 20, 25-yard, scampers. So I think for the AFC, I think you're going to be looking at Bills and Chiefs. And I think you're going to look at the Chiefs going to the Super Bowl again. And the NFC, I think we're going to looking at Detroit. I'm going to root for Detroit, like you said. Campbell was on the Giants. He backed up Shockey. There's a lot to like about that story. Plus, I like to see a team that hasn't won in a while, somebody else win it. So I think Detroit is, never been to the Super Bowl, so I think that they deserve it. So I think it's going to be them, and I'm rooting for. I got to root for the Elizabeth guy, Todd Bowles. So I think it's going to be Detroit, and I'm hoping Tampa Bay in the NFC Championship. But I don't think that. I like Mayfield, but sometimes when he gets squeezed, sometimes he throws a bad pick because he feels like he has a pressure on. I'm a big Mayfield fan, but I think that Detroit punches their ticket. But that'll be a fun Super Bowl, Kansas City and Detroit. So I don't know. You want to make?
And I would. There would be nothing that would make me happy. The happiest this playoffs could make me, I should say, as a Giant fan. Obviously, Giants not in it. Would see Nick Sirianni walking off with that smug look of his after a loss. That would really make my my February, my January, I should say.
Yeah. Well, I was listening to your buddy Art Stapleton, so he brought up a good point. He had on his podcast. He's talking about Barkley, and he said Barkley wouldn't have the year that he had down in Philly with the line with the Giants, and
Yeah,
also
Philly was loaded. Philly was
and
loaded.
also
Absolutely.
he's looking. He goes, not only if you sign him, not only looking at 2025, you're also looking at 26 and 27. Is he going to be the player down the road? So so kind of softened the blow a little bit about Barkley going there. I think I still could always consider him a Giant, and he's a great teammate. But I mean, it was a tough pill to swallow with him
Yeah,
going
sure.
down the Jersey Turnpike. So
And Artie Stapleton, out of anybody that's ever covered the Giants, that covers the Giants, he is numero uno. I always find him to be on point. I think all his assessments are fair. Particularly this year, a lot of the things that he said and written were spot on. Personally, I can't say the same about Pat Leonard from the Daily News, but we'll leave that there.
yeah.
You
But
know,
going back to the you could say that about us. Going back to the Hard Knocks, we thought this was it. They make all the right moves. Barkley was 27. They beefed up the line. You had Dexter Lawrence. You had a lot to be excited about, and just I don't know. Where do you think the season went wrong, Jerry? Where do you think the season went sideways?
I think it became increasing. I mean, listen, where you put the injuries on hold. Jones didn't start out well, and it wouldn't surprise me, and I think I told you this previously, that if he really did find his place somewhere else and became, and had a good season. Like, I think what you're seeing from Sam Darnold, I think Daniel Jones, can perform at a high level. Do I think he was the franchise quarterback that the Giants wanted him to be? No. And I think this year, after the rough start, Dabol calling the plays, they just couldn't get any consistency, and the quarterback play was brutal. And I think Jones really lost confidence in himself. And then, as you know, it went from one week to the next, and things just unraveled. And then, in a season like this, as it does happens, injuries start piling up, and it was a god awful season.
It was bad.
There's a lot that went wrong. I mean, defensively, they were horrible. Their rushing defense was horrible. And you could flip that and say, well, their offense put their defense, in a bad spot. That doesn't hold water with me. Yes, there's truth in that. But as we know from being kids, when I started watching the Giants, right, their best players were Harry Carson, Brian Kelly, Brad Van Pelt, George Martin, John Mendenhall were on the defensive side of the ball. And I don't know if it's the system, coming from, basically you had Martindale system, heavy blitzing. This was the complete opposite, but there's obviously a disconnect there. So defensively, I think what surprised me is how bad they were defensively. I was expecting more from that unit. Offensively, listen, the bottom line, it was an absolute shit show. It was. They couldn't score. They were awful in the red zone. I mean, there's a ton of things. And again, you say this, right? And you say this, Giants were awful offensively. They couldn't score. And then you start looking at stats, and you were like, how did Wan'Dale Robinson catch 80-something balls? How did Neighbors break Steve Smith's record? It's unfathomable that those guys, but again, I think Robinson, right, has a distinction now. I saw this the other day, that he has the most catches, but he averaged the fewest yards for somebody that had that many catches. And again, how many times did he catch a 4-yard pass?
Yeah, a lot. And he also, the drops. I mean, we talked about it. There's a lot of bad drops, a lot of bad penalties that changed the course of the game. So it was undisciplined. So I mean, and that all comes back to the coach. So, but I'm still going to be watching the games, and I know you are. So
absolutely.
Listen, Jerry, I think we're up against it. So I just wanted to,
well, we have a few things in the hopper, right? We have a few guests. I think I would be remiss if I didn't say this, but I think based on the last 24 hours, we should really try to get Joy Taylor to come on the show. But that's another story for another day. I think everybody would enjoy a conversation with her. My God.
She's an internet sensation now. So I mean,
Oh my
a
God.
social media sensation. Oh my God, that's a story in itself.
Yeah.
There's so many twists and turns there. I didn't know where to go, but I don't know. Maybe she might be in high demand right now. I don't know. But anyway, this is episode number 31. I'd like to thank Dave Sturcio and Chop Sports Media for producing this episode. Stay tuned for episode number 32. We're going to try to keep continuing to be one of those 600,000 podcasts that have one every week. Look for, we're going to have some guests. Might pivot to basketball as college and pro basketball starts kicking up, and we put the final nail in the coffin for this season. But from my co-host Jerry Calla, this is Jimmy Whalen. Episode number 31 is in the books. Have a good week, everybody.
Take care.